All right, thanks everybody for being here. It's nice to be able to present after 7:30. So no disclosures. So, when figuring out what I was going to speak about, I kind of asked myself two questions. Number one, what's my unique area of knowledge? And number two, how can I use that knowledge to provide the most value to everybody that's listening in the audience here today? So I realized that as residents, we're on this journey where we're asking ourselves, like, how are we going to become the best surgeons possible? It's a question I've been asking myself for the past 7 years. And in trying to answer this question, I kind of stumbled onto this parallel journey where I asked myself, how can I actually become the best human being possible? Now, this is not to say that better than anybody else, but just the best version of my own self. This journey became a very conscious one for me somewhere around the beginning of research year, where there's a lot of changes, obviously, where I read some books that really changed my life. And so I made it a specific goal to become a better human being. Since that time, I've read about 120 books. I've listened to hundreds of podcasts. I created a mastermind group that meets about once a week on Skype to kind of go over these ideas with a couple of our friends. And so my goal today is to share the ideas that have had the biggest impact on making me a better surgeon and a better human being. I hope that you find these ideas interesting, but more importantly, I hope that you experiment with some of these ideas, and I hope they change your life like they've changed mine. So we'll kind of get into the deep stuff right away. One of the most important concepts I ever learned was that of awareness. We have this ability to be aware that we don't always use, but basically becoming aware is the first step that we can use to solve any problem. You have to be aware of the problem before you can fix it. Now, unfortunately, we live in really a state of unawareness. The majority of the day, we're kind of on this autopilot. We're walking through life without really being conscious. Most of what we do is really controlled by old habits, routines, beliefs, and kind of primitive drives. And I kind of think of it as like an outdated software. It's stuff that helps us survive, but it's not meant to make us thrive. And a good example of this is like the fight or flight response. 1,000 years ago, you saw a saber-toothed tiger. It elicited fear. You got the fight or flight. You ran away. That extra jolt of energy helped you survive. But today, we're afraid of things like public speaking. And so that fight or flight response, doesn't really help you. You can't run away from your M&M presentation, or at least it won't help you. And so there's many things like that we're programmed with that aren't really useful these days. So I think one of the kind of secrets to living a better life is reprogramming yourself. And we have, as humans, we have that unique ability to be consciously aware of what we're doing, although most of the time we're not aware. And so my goal is kind of to go over some of these ways to reprogram yourself. So how are you going to do that? So we have to realize that our outcomes in life are determined by our actions, and then our actions are determined by our thoughts. The average human has an estimated 60,000 thoughts per day. And interestingly, about 95% of those are the same today as they were yesterday. And if you start to observe your thoughts, you'll notice that the majority of your thoughts are actually pretty useless. They don't really serve any purpose, completely random. And so one of the best things you can do is really begin to observe your thoughts throughout the day. There's a great book that I really changed my life. It's called The Power of Now. And this guy, Eckhart Tolle, he talks about really becoming an observer of your thoughts, at any point in your day. When you're walking, when you're driving, when you're brushing your teeth, when you're waiting in line, just kind of start to notice the thoughts that are in your head. Over time, you'll become better at separating yourself from these thoughts. His whole premise is that those thoughts are not you. We kind of live with this voice in our head that we never really stop to question it. We think it's us, but it's just a bunch of randomness. One specific technique that can help with this is meditation. I've been meditating for about 3 years, for a couple minutes every morning. And basically, meditation just involves sitting somewhere quietly and just noticing those thoughts. Over time, you'll start to be able to decrease the amount of thoughts in your mind, and you'll be able to ignore the thoughts that don't make sense, which is most of them. So I encourage everyone to experiment with meditation. That's my number one kind of tip here. So now that we're trying to observe our thoughts, we have to have something to focus on. So what better thing to focus on than breathing? Interestingly, we've been taking 10 to 15 breaths per minute for the majority of our life. But when was the last time you actually took a conscious, deep breath? Could have been years ago. So I mean, you could try right now. Take a slow, deep breath in and out. And interestingly, this has actually been shown to stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system. And it can actually counteract the fight or flight response, which is pretty cool. So how can you use this to your advantage? Well, one, anytime you want to increase your awareness throughout the day, you're noticing your thoughts, just focus on your breathing. Slow down your breathing, slow, deep breaths. This will slowly, you'll have more of these episodes per day where you're developing this awareness. The other situation you can use it in is anytime you're anxious or nervous, again, focus on your breathing, take some slow, deep breaths. That will counteract the fight or flight response. So how do I use it at work? I mean, you can use it before a case. You can use it in the middle of a long case where you're frustrated. You can use it when you're waiting for a bad trauma to come in just to get yourself in the right mindset. So not only does it make you better at what you're doing, you'll actually enjoy what you're doing more. Another area that we are really unaware of is the words that we use. I mean, words are just thoughts that we're saying aloud, and they have a tremendous power. I actually created a list of words that I try not to ever say because I feel like they have a negative impact on me and the people around me. For example, the word tired. I mean, the minute you say, I'm tired, you basically are tired. It's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I've experimented and, I kind of, if I feel tired, I try to instead tell myself, I'm full of energy. And it kind of works. Even if it's not true, you can kind of notice it. No one says, I'm energetic. You kind of get that energy right when you say the word. So that's something you can experiment with. The second word I try never to say is stressed, because I feel like that's an internal response to an external stimulus. Interestingly, you'll notice that two people are in the same situation and they handle it totally differently. One person will say that they're stressed, and another person will, be happy and having the time of their life. So it never really benefits you to say that you're stressed. So I try to avoid that one altogether. And then the word busy. This is an interesting one because it's really just a lie. We all have 24 hours a day. No matter who you are, you're going to have 24 hours a day, and we have the ability to use that however we want. Whether we use most of that at work or not is up to us. But I've replaced busy with, this. I try to say, instead of saying I'm busy, I'll instead say this is not a priority for me at this time. And so what that does is that'll empower you to start making better decisions with your time. Now, we can also use words in a positive way as well. We all know about the placebo effect. There's been a ton of research done on this, and basically across the board, there's about patients will improve about 30% of the time on their own without any medical treatment, and some of that's due to the power of just belief that you're going to get better. And so I think, as surgeons, our words actually have a tremendous power, especially for our patients. So I think we can use this to our advantage by focusing on using encouraging words, when possible. At the end of every patient that I see on rounds, I always try to point out something that they're making progress on, whether it's ambulating or eating better or using their IS. And I say, hey, you're doing great. Keep up the good work. You're getting better. So I think that actually has a positive impact on their recovery. So I encourage you guys to come up with your own positive things to say. There's no downside. So next, I want to talk a little bit about happiness. So the kind of the ultimate goal of all our goals is really to be happy when it boils down to it. But interestingly, we let the smallest things derail our happiness. Somebody cuts you off, Starbucks messes up your coffee order, somebody says something to you in a weird way, and it can ruin your day. But interestingly, we have this power, this ability that we don't really harness, and that's between any stimulus, an external stimulus, and our reaction to that, we can actually choose what we're going to do. It's a very brief moment, but let me give you a quick example. So let's say you're holding a 5513 pager, surgical consult service. You get a consult, it's 2 a.m., right? ER's calling you, they got a guy with abdominal pain. How do you respond? Let's do a ABSITE style here. Multiple choice. You say, yay, I get to help the patient. You say, B, I hate the ER. You say, C, I hate my life. Or D, you say, probably most commonly say B and C. So shouldn't we be saying A? I mean, that's what we're here for, right? To help our patients. So I read this awesome book. It's called Flip the Gratitude Switch by this guy named Kevin Clayson. And his whole point is that it's really those little frustrations in our day that kind of derail our happiness. And so he advocates becoming aware of those situations throughout your day, those tiny frustrations. And the minute that you become aware, instead of being frustrated, you look for gratitude in that situation. And in our field, we always have a lot to be grateful for. It's right in front of us. So you can be grateful that the patient's serving as an opportunity for you to learn. You can be grateful that you're helping the ER physician. And if you really can't find anything to be grateful for, you can always be grateful that you're not the patient. So you really always have something to be grateful for. I would say I would encourage people to use these little opportunities throughout the day to increase your awareness. It's like exercising your awareness muscle. The next concept I want to talk about is deliberate practice. So this is a process that can help us become more aware and also become better learners. So there's been a ton of research done on the topic of mastery where the people that are best in their field are compared to the other individuals in the field. And what's been noticed is that the masters tend to focus on using deliberate practice, which is basically just being consciously aware of what you're learning, as opposed to just going through the motions. And interestingly, when I was an intern on vascular surgery, I remember Dr. Dawson, I don't know if he's here today, but he always used to ask at the end of his clinic, like, what did you learn today? And it was always kind of caught you off guard because you're seeing 10 new patients, you sort of learned at least 10 new things, but you had to kind of pause and think about it. And that's always a very interesting concept. But being consciously aware of what you're thinking about significantly improves how much you can learn. And so how can you actually apply this? So for the last couple of years, I've been trying to apply it as a surgery resident. I try to write down what I'm learning. So there's a couple key time points in the day. During rounds and at the end of rounds, I make sure I write down at least one thing I learned. Same goes for, during each case, I try to pay attention to one thing I'm learning and write it down at the end of the case. But then you can also create little challenges for yourself, like in the operating room. If you're doing another cholecystectomy, you can just look at it as a routine cholecystectomy and you might not get much out of it. Or you can focus on something like, having the perfect port placement, dissecting out the cystic duct without any prompting from the attending, or challenging yourself to get to a certain point in the procedure by a certain time. And those things will actually make you better. So I encourage everyone to try those because it's actually been proven to make you better. So now that we've developed some awareness, I think it's important to create some goals. Now, as surgeons, we know a lot about goals. I mean, every single case that we do has a goal. Whether it's to stop the bleeding, fix the hernia, get the tumor out. But it's interesting that we kind of walk through life without sometimes having any goals. And so one of the ways we can basically create goals is, I think we need to start with something that I like to call a definite major purpose. This is a concept I read about from this guy named Napoleon Hill. And basically, you figure out, what's my purpose in life? And it becomes, try to make it as specific as possible. Not just to help people, but maybe you're going to help people by, developing the best mesh for hernia repair, or, using stem cells to regenerate a certain tissue. I think everyone should have one of these, and you may not know what it is, but something you can experiment with. My own definite major purpose involves, improving surgical education, and so as a direct byproduct of this, I've made my surgical education website, and I've created a surgical success manual. And although it's in its infancy, it's just a direct result of having that purpose. Once you have that purpose, you can work backwards and create goals and kind of reverse engineer your life to do stuff every single day that's going to help you get to that purpose. A similar kind of concept is something called a life manifesto, where you can create something where it's not necessarily a purpose, but it's something you're going to do every single day. So I borrowed mine from this guy named Robert Sharma, and basically it's to leave every person, place, and situation better than I found it. And so how do I apply that? Well, we're not just, the way I look at it, we're not just here to help the patient. We're here to improve the lives of everyone that we interact with, whether that's the patient's family, or fellow residents, nurses, scrub techs. people look up to us as surgeons, and I think having that awareness and having that manifesto or purpose, it makes us see the importance of all the little things we do every day, because they do have a really big impact on people's lives. So I encourage everyone to make their own purpose or their own manifesto, and just watch and see the impact it can have on your life. Now, to have success, I think we're good at creating goals for our career, but we oftentimes neglect the other areas of our life. So I also borrowed this concept called the Big Five from this guy, Robin Sharma. And he says, pick out the most important areas of your life that you want to improve in. And most people are going to have relatively similar goals. I break mine down into these categories here. My health, my career, my legacy, my growth, my finances, and my relationships. And so what I do is at the end of every year, I sit down and create goals within each of those categories. So it could be, I could have a goal for how much I want to weigh next year, or how many books I want to read, or how much money I want to save. And so just having that awareness makes you much more likely to hit those goals. And it's had a pretty big impact on my life. Once you make those goals, I like to use this format called a SMART goal, which you may have heard about: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-based. And so I'll give you an example from my own experience as a surgery resident. My bigger goal is to become a great surgeon, but one of my goals last year was to finish a surgical textbook. 1,800 pages. I've been kind of putting it off, but I said, I'm just going to read 100 pages a month. And so I was actually able to finish the entire Schwartz book, textbook, and I did it using some of the techniques that I'll talk about next. So my next point is that the little things in life, they're really everything. Success is not about doing some big magical things every now and then. It's really about doing all these little things consistently over time. So one of the questions I ask myself is, so what's the best way to read this surgical textbook? I stumbled upon this book called the Compound Effect, and this really helped me kind of develop my reading plan. And so this guy, Darren Hardy, that wrote this book, his whole point is that you're going to gain huge rewards from taking small steps every single day. And so I ended up making a plan to basically just read for 15 minutes a day. That was where I started. He points out the power of momentum, though. When I started residency, people always said read every day, but that was kind of like telling people if they want to be healthy just to eat right and exercise. It's not that effective. But when this guy puts it this way about doing it every single day and never missing a day, it has a tremendous power. You build up this momentum, and I'll take a minute to say that when I say every day, I'm talking about resident days, surgery resident days. Those are not it's kind of like dog years. I consider a call day and a post-call day as one day. So a resident week has about 5 days in it. So for my reading purposes, I was reading 5 days a week. And so I started reading for 15 minutes a day. And then he also talks about the power of tracking. Anything that we track makes us more accountable. And so I just created a template, and I would put a checkbox every day, when I read. On occasion, I would miss a day, and then the next day I would have to do 2 reading sessions, which is kind of like punishment. So it's even a further motivator to keep reading every single day. So I encourage everyone to kind of come up with their own, come up with something that you want to do every single day. But this still required. I felt like this still required a lot of effort, and I thought, man, can't this be any easier? So enter the next book. So this one's called The Power of Habit. It's one that actually Dr. Haidt told me about. Interesting concept. So think about this. When was the last time you skipped brushing your teeth in the morning? Probably never, or at least close to that. But when was the last time you skipped a day of surgical reading? Probably yesterday. So it's kind of interesting. It's like I don't think having great teeth is on anyone's list of lifetime goals, but I think being a great surgeon is. So why are we so consistent with brushing our teeth and not with reading? It's kind of weird. But it really boils down to one word: habit. Right? We've been conditioned since we were kids to brush our teeth every single day, and so it becomes a habit, one that you don't even have to think about. So I wanted to know, how can I make reading a habit, so that I do it every single day without using much energy. And so there's this thing called a habit loop, which the author talks about. I don't know if you can see it real well. Every habit loop involves a cue. That's some sort of stimulus that makes you think about the habit, the routine that you're going to do, and then a reward. So since I was already brushing my teeth every day, every morning, I decided I'll use that as my cue. So right after I brush my teeth, I'm going to read for 15 minutes. This is known as like a keystone habit. You already brush your teeth, and so you can really use that to link a new habit onto that. So the cue was brushing my teeth. The new routine was reading 15 minutes in the morning, and then the reward is that I got to put a check marks in my template, and then by the end of the month, it's a nice reward to see that the entire template filled out. So, but to become a great surgeon, you got to do more than just read. You got to become a master of the anatomy. You got to perfect your surgical skills. So I wanted to start adding these onto my daily routines. But as we all know, we always make great goals for when we get home. We're going to exercise, we're going to read, we're going to cook a healthy meal, but it pretty much never happens. And that's due to this concept called willpower depletion. Basically, as you go out through the day making decisions and doing things, you deplete your willpower. And by the end of the day, you don't have enough willpower to make a good decision. So next, I ended up stumbling onto this book called The Miracle Morning. And this guy's whole premise is that you really should be doing the activities that are most relevant to your success in the morning, or at least as early as possible in the day. And if you're anything like me, you're probably thinking like, I really don't want to get up any earlier. I barely get up as it is, and so I don't have the time to do this. But really, we all have a routine as it is right now. You got to ask yourself, what's your current routine? So when I read this book, my routine was to make a breakfast, read the news, and check emails. Now, none of those actually align with any of my long-term goals. So over time, I developed a new morning routine that I start off with meditation, exercise, reading, and reviewing anatomy. And that's had a tremendous impact on the progress I've made. So I encourage everyone to make their own morning routine or modify their morning routine. And you can start real simple, 5 minutes of reading, just every morning, right after you brush your teeth or right after you eat. Just develop that, and over time you can add on to it, basically like I did. At one point I had a whole 45-minute routine, but you can modify that based on your schedule, your rotation that you're on. So now that we've developed some awareness, we've made some goals, some routines, it's important to learn how to overcome obstacles, because we often have this voice in our head that tells you that you should quit. We've all experienced that from time to time. So there's this concept known as grit. It's defined as the ability to endure a short-term pain for the achievement of a long-term goal. It kind of sounds like residency, except the short-term part. So I kind of think of this. I kind of refer to this as like dominating the voice in your own head. But the greater your grit, the more successful you'll be at basically anything you do. And luckily, you can actually increase your grit. And in order to do so, you have to realize that all growth really occurs outside your comfort zone. That's true if you're trying to grow muscle. That's true if you're trying to grow your mind. And so we have to look for things that push us to areas that are painful. And so here's me and Dr. Salcedo working on increasing our grit. This is a 2015 CIM, California International Marathon, 26.2 miles. So I think most people that run marathons, they like running, they enjoy it a little bit, but I think probably for me and Salcedo, I don't think that's the case. I think we probably ran about 1 mile a month combined before this training. And so I really wanted to challenge myself. Really, for me, this was all about a mental challenge. The physical thing I didn't care so much about. But I said, if I'm going to run it, I'm going to run it wearing a 40-pound weight vest. And so you can see I got my little Dominate license plate on there as a reminder to increase my grit. But you might not be able to see it. So there's actually a funny story behind this one, so I'll talk about that real quick. So this is after about a year and a half after the Boston bombing at the marathon, and so if you can't tell from here, but that weight vest looks pretty much like a bomb. I'm a brown guy. I got a beard. I'm wearing this thing that looks like a bomb. to an event that has about 10,000 people at it. And so, the day before, you got my wife and my mom calling me like, dude, don't wear this vest, it's not worth it. And I've already been training for 10 weeks, so that's a long time for me. So obviously, when your mom and your wife tell you something, you usually should listen. But in this situation, I did compromise. So I wore a blue fleece, so you can't really even see the weight vest. And then, of course, for good measure on the back, I put an American flag, so no one would shoot me. It worked. I survived. But unfortunately, I don't think anyone realized I was wearing a weight vest. I was trying to motivate people, but I think it just looked like I had an odd distribution of body fat. But in either case, me and Salcedo, we crossed the finish line before they disassembled the whole thing, about 5.5 hours. Apparently at 6 hours, everything's gone. So we made it. So I encourage everyone to, kind of create your own challenges that push you outside your comfort zone. If you want to borrow the weight vest, I'll hook you up. So after this, I asked myself, okay, cool, we did this. What's next? So I came up with a bunch of other challenges. But for about the day after the marathon, I came up with this idea of taking cold showers. So for about 1 year, I limited myself to only cold showers, where I would just allow one warm shower a week, and ice cold showers the other 6 days. And so I quit after about a year, but I think it did help me increase my grit. Never got easier, never. But even throughout your day, you can kind of infuse these little challenges. So some days I'll try not to eat anything until lunch, just trying to overcome that pain sensation or a hunger sensation. Some days I'll challenge myself not to hit snooze. But it's kind of fun, it's kind of painful, but I think that it all helps you grow. And the good thing is, once you increase your ability, and once you increase your grit, this is kind of like an ability that translates to any area of your life. So I feel like now I can go through a longer operation on less food and enjoy the process a lot more than I used to in the past. So come up with your own challenges and increase your grit. So the next concept I want to talk about is this thing called the growth mindset. Failure basically is inevitable if you're trying to do anything big. And it's not really so much about whether you're going to fail. It's about how you're going to respond to failure. And so this author, Carol Dweck, she actually spent her whole life researching how people respond to failure. And she came up with this concept of two mindsets, a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. So in the fixed mindset, people assume that their intelligence is fixed and that they can't grow. So they basically do everything they can to avoid looking stupid. And that has some negative consequences for them. Whereas those people that have a growth mindset, they look at, how can I learn? And they look at every failure as an opportunity to learn. We're as surgeons, we're actually all about this. I mean, M&M conference, I've been sitting, 6:45 to 7:30 essentially for the last 7 years, sitting in this classroom or a similar room, and there's never been a shortage of M&Ms to present. Even though we have some of the world experts in your area of surgical expertise, there's still failures that happen, and so how do you? So it's really not about looking at failure as failure. It's looking at it as an area for improvement. And so I've tried to, for the last couple of years, think of failure as how can I use this to improve myself. So a couple of times that I use this throughout the day is, so after rounds, I take a minute to just think like, okay, what could I have done better this morning? That after rounds, I noticed that I made a decision and the attending said something else. How could I have done that better? I jot a little note down just to make it more aware. And I do the same thing after every case. There's always something you could do better after every case. But interestingly, you can do the same thing in your life. You can look at how can I have been a better human being? How could I have been nicer to somebody? Did I neglect my health today? Did I neglect my family? And over time, if you keep writing these things down at the end of the day, you become a little bit better today than you were yesterday, and you kind of inch your way closer to living a successful life. So I encourage everyone to look at failure as an area for improvement and kind of keep track of these things. The final concept I want to talk about is the importance of relationships. So, we do a lot of cool and crazy stuff here, but really, it wouldn't be as exciting if it weren't for the people that we did it with. Saving a life, it's a team effort, and luckily at the Med Center here, we're surrounded by a ton of awesome people. And being a resident, working 80 hours a week, it's really made me realize the importance of making time for relationships. I have some of my best friends living around here. I grew up around here. But sometimes I went a year without seeing them, which I thought was kind of crazy because, we all know that nothing's guaranteed in life. Even if you're healthy today, you could get hit by a car or you could get cancer. I mean, we see it every day in people that are our age or even younger. So, you have to understand the importance of time. And so I did a couple things. One, I wanted to strengthen the relationships that I had. And so I heard about this concept where you write down all the people you want to see in the year. So I made a list of about 25 people the first year that I did this, and by the end of the year, I made it a goal to see 2 people a month. By the end of the year, I'd seen 22 of the 25 on my list, and it's actually one of the coolest things I did. So I think relationships. I think I encourage everyone to do something similar, whether you want to meet 10 people or 100 people. I think it just makes you really aware of how long it's been since you've seen some of the great people you know. The other kind of point about relationships is that we're surrounded by so many awesome people. We should be creating new relationships all the time. And so I just made a simple goal to make one new friend every day. So we meet new residents, new students, new nurses, new scrub techs every single day. And so at the end of the day, I would just try to write down the name and just kind of try to remember who they were. You might think it's like I'm a borderline stalker, but it's actually pretty cool. It works. It's definitely increased the number of relationships that I have with people here. So now I just want to take a minute. I have a 4-minute video. I think this video kind of captures some of the highlights of what I said. It's not going to make any sense until I explain it, so just kind of bear with me here. Let's see.
£571,230,000 of paper towels are used by Americans every year. If we could, wrong figure, 13 billion used every year. If we could reduce the usage of paper towels, 1 paper towel per person per day, 571,230,000 pounds of paper not used. We could do that. Now, there are all kinds of paper towel dispensers. There's the trifold. People typically take 2 or 3. There's the one that cuts it that you have to tear off. People go 1, 2, 3, 4, tear. This much, right? There's the one that cuts itself. People go 1, 2, 3, 4. Or there's the same thing, but recycled paper. You have to get 5 of those because they're not as absorbent, of course. The fact is, you can do it all with 1 towel. The key, 2 words. This half of the room, your word is shake. Let's hear it. Shake. Louder. Shake. Your word is fold. Fold. Again. Fold. Really loud. Shake. Fold. Okay. Wet hands. Shake. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Why 12? 12 apostles, 12 tribes, 12 zodiac signs, 12 months. The one I like the best, it's the biggest number with 1 syllable. Trifold. Fold. Dry. Cuts itself. Fold. The fold is important because it allows interstitial suspension. You don't have to remember that part, but trust me. Cuts itself. You know, the funny thing is, I get my hands drier than people do with 3 or 4 because they can't get in between the cracks. If you think this isn't as good, now, there's now a real fancy invention. It's the one where you wave your hand and it kicks it out. It's way too big a towel. Let me tell you a secret. If you're really quick, and I can prove this, this is half a towel from the dispenser in this building. How? As soon as it starts, you just tear it off. And it's smart enough to stop, and you get half a towel. Now let's all say it together. Shake, fold. You will, for the rest of your life, remember those words every time you pick up a paper towel. And remember, 1 towel per person for 1 year, 571,230,000 pounds of paper. No small thing. And next year, toilet paper.
So, all right, so this video, although you may think it doesn't have anything to do with the talk, but it actually puts a lot of the points that I talked about together. One, it just shows how unaware we are. You know, I've seen this video a couple years ago, so I kind of cringe every time people grab like 8 towels. But so it'll help you develop your awareness. You know, instead of just drying your hands and just kind of doing it on autopilot, you'll be consciously aware. This will help you increase your awareness throughout the day. It's kind of interesting because washing your hands also serves as a cue for creating a new habit. And so instead of taking multiple towels, you just take one. And that's basically how you create a new habit. You just wait for the cue and implement your routine. It also, it's also funny because it's using a paper towel is such a little thing, but it's something you do every single day, multiple times a day. And the power, you can never underestimate the power of those little things to have a huge impact on your life and on the world. And so, spread the word, and I'll be watching. So, I just want to conclude real quick by saying, I talked about a lot of ideas. I hope you found them interesting or entertaining, but I hope you pick at least one idea and start today and just kind of experiment with whatever one resonates with you. I highlighted all the actionable steps. We're surgeons, we like to do stuff. So these are all things that I've actually tried, and you can actually try, starting today. To increase your awareness, you can meditate, focus on your breathing, think about the words that you're saying. Choose a response instead of a reaction. Start practicing deliberately. In terms of your goals, you can create a purpose, create a manifesto, develop your big 5, create some SMART goals. Focusing on the little things, you can build a new habit, a new morning routine, use tracking. In terms of grit, do something that's difficult. Go outside your comfort zone. Increase your growth mindset by looking for areas for improvement in yourself after rounds, after a case, or every night. In terms of relationships, meet the people that matter to you. Make sure you carve out time for those people, and make new friends every single day. So, and I want to finish off by saying thank you to all the awesome attendings and fellow residents, all the nurses, nurse practitioners, everybody that's been here. Has made my residency a really awesome process, an enjoyable one, and so I can't thank everybody enough for contributing to that. And obviously, I also want to thank my wife who's here today. She's for all of her support, for everything she's done, in keeping our family functional. Can't thank her enough.